I don't need to let your nastiness make me complicit in the ugliness. If you don't like the family that backbites, then don't backbite. We must become the change we seek in the world. 'Tis the season to be jolly, right? The reality is, for many of us, the holidays feel more like a whirlwind of unmet expectations, family drama, financial anxiety, old wounds resurfacing, and complete burnout for a few of us. Today, I'm going to give you 5 practical steps that you can start implementing today to reverse all of those holiday stressors and ultimately create an enjoyable and stress-free holiday season. So grab your hot cocoa, bundle up, and let's dive right in. Step number 1 is to set realistic expectations. Each person has different needs and wants and traditions. So don't assume that everyone in your family is on the same page. Don't assume that you and your partner are even in the same game. And instead of assuming that we're on the same page, we are actually going to get on the same page. So on my Becoming One program recently, when I was coaching a group of people, one of the people came on talking about her Thanksgiving holidays and how disappointed she was of how boring all of her family and friends are. She had planned a bunch of games and a bunch of activities to bring everyone excitement and fun, and you won't believe it, nobody there wanted to have that fun. In fact, some right after dinner needed to leave, and some didn't want to play the games, and some didn't even understand the games because they were actually visiting and had immigrated from a new country, and they weren't used to some of these American traditions. So what it taught me is it's not about just keeping traditions. It's about being realistic about what's going on in our current situations and in our current circumstances. We have to make our expectations align to the realities of our life and the situation. Think about just during the pandemic, how some of our holiday traditions changed. And the traditions had to just be adapted a little bit, but they were based on the reality of that time. Just take your own life, for example. How many times have you and your partner been on a different page? And you had a completely perfect idea for how that date night was going to go, or you had a perfect idea for how that party would go with your family and friends, and it just didn't turn out the way you thought it would. There's 4 different points that I'd love you and your partner to sit down with and set realistic expectations. And as we go through each one, I want you evaluating this upcoming holiday season and how you're going to manage these differences. The first point is we're going to schedule and calendar. Right? There is going to be an actual logistical side to each one of these parties or events or activities, and they need to be on the schedule. In fact, just recently, I had a client come in my office whose husband is a leader of a company and is known for literally 5 to 6 months when the company party was, but he never bothered to tell his wife. And she never got it on her calendar. And she filled up her calendar. And she filled it up with a ton of activities. And then when he told her when the family or the Christmas party was for the company, it wasn't on her calendar. And she has tried forever to get him to talk about scheduling and calendaring, and he won't do it. So what is she supposed to do? She said historically she would always just go to his company party then and give up everything else that was scheduled. But this year, she wasn't going to do that because she needs him to learn to schedule and calendar. So think about yourself. Where do you guys need to be and for how long? In the next 2 to 3 weeks, getting through the holiday season, what does the schedule look like? Pull out your calendars, sit down, talk about it. Who needs to be where? What are some parties that one of you doesn't need to go to? What party do we both need to go to? What do we need to do to get our kids there? What is the schedule that our kids are facing? And go through your calendar. The second point I want you to focus on is the budget. Right? We've got to be on the same page about how much we want to spend or not spend. We want to be really clear about what's affordable. If we know what the budget is for Christmas this season, you don't end up overspending, getting into debt, which will cause other relationship issues as well, right? One other thing that I have a major problem with when it comes to budget is because I'm not working on a budget. I'm kind of working on my gut. And I look at my kids' piles of gifts And if they don't feel like there's enough, there's something in me that compels me at the very last minute to go buy a whole lot more, even if it's not needed. And that's even harder today because there's so many technological devices that cost $1,000. So you spend $1,000 and it's a tiny little box. That's not enough for a kid, is it? We got to talk through the budget. We got to figure out what we are willing to spend or able to spend. And that may change year to year based on the situation and the circumstances of that year. Identify, by the way, what things are actually costing. We might have certain things that we bought a few months ago that we don't even see those as part of the spending. But let's include those numbers as well. So we're very real and honest about how much money is coming and going. The third thing we want to focus on are the extended family issues. One of the hardest things I think about the holiday season is we're starting to merge in our relationships, my traditions and your traditions, my family and your family. And everybody wants it fair, right? Everybody wants it equal. And the dilemma is some of our families have really awesome traditions and they might have a better tradition like at Thanksgiving than they do at Christmas. And others might have a better tradition at Christmas than Thanksgiving. So we need to sit down and talk about it by figuring out how are we going to balance our time with both sides of the family. And again, one of the things I kind of think about when it comes to balancing, I don't think of necessarily equal, because sometimes it's not going to always be the same amount of minutes, but I think it might be equitable, right? There might be certain activities that one family does that we have to be there for that activity because it's so memorable, it's so impactful. We love sleigh riding, right? But we may not have a great meal after sleigh riding, where we go to another family and theirs is all about good meals, all about good conversation. The goal in the end is let's find a way that we can both be happy and grow our extended family connections. I want you to remember that what you're also modeling as you're having this conversation about how to visit family members on both sides, you're modeling for your children how they should do it going forward. Right? If it's okay that we never visit dad's family ever, you've modeled that for your children. So going forward, your child and their new spouse may have already learned from you that it's okay that we don't spend equitable amount of time and energy with both sides of the family. Be careful what you're doing because you are setting up the next generation. The fourth and final thing I want you to make sure you're on the same page about is togetherness. How can we make time for just the two of us? A lot of times in all of this holiday bustle, when we're running around doing all of these things, we get out of our rituals and our traditions with each other. We don't have time to be intimate. We don't have time to cuddle like we used to. When we're away and we're visiting family, that's going to be awkward if we needed to go down and have cuddle time. So how are we going to get through that time together? How are we going to make sure that our family doesn't suffer, right? The healthiest, happiest couples have really systemic, strong traditions or rituals of connecting regularly, right? 3 to 5 times every day, they're trying to connect in. 1 to 2 times a week, 1 to 2 times a month, 2 to 3 times a year. These rituals are essential, which is why in the middle of a holiday season, we can't tip over our most important rituals for the rituals and traditions of just that season. We can try to incorporate them. But if cuddling in the morning, if cuddling at night is important to us, let's keep the ritual as a tradition that we're going to find time for throughout the holiday season. If going on a date is important to us, then let's make that date maybe incorporate it into the year or the month by going shopping together and make it a really fun date, right? If talking and kissing and connecting and being together are important to us, we're going to make those part of the rituals. So the most important rituals are the ones that we're going to do so regularly that it gives us 5 times a day to reconnect to each other and to recorrect our direction, right? If I get in a fight with you, I need 5 chances a day to reset the relationship. And we're going to do that through these connected rituals. You got to make sure too that you're not getting tipped over in your overwhelm of your family, where all of a sudden you are at your family's house. They're so exhausting and there's so many and all this stuff, and you're running around that you lose each other for the 3 or 4 days whenever you're with your family. How many of you relate to that? Have you ever gone to a family reunion or a family event where you and your partner don't end up talking for hours or months? It feels like, as you're sitting there for 2 days. We haven't even talked to each other because everybody's talking to everybody else. We want to make sure that our togetherness is the primary goal. And it doesn't mean we have to sit by each other and do everything together, but let's connect in regularly when we're doing these things. Okay, so here's the challenge for you. Sit down with your partner and discuss the expectations and logistics that we just went over. Be clear and open about your priorities and limitations. And remember that you don't just have to even just do it as a couple. You could sit down as a full family and do the same conversation. You could then sit down with extended family and talk about it for the next holiday season, right? Because the reality is, if we're all on the same page, it's going to dramatically increase the likelihood that in the end, we're all going to be happier. Okay, now let's move on to step number 2 to a happier holiday season. It's to focus on the intangibles. A lot of times what happens to us is we get so fixated on the tangible thing that needs to be done that we end up stepping on the toes of all of the intangible things, which were all the real reasons we wanted to have the thing done, right? We can get so caught up in getting to the event that we can actually not like each other, be mad at each other, and have 2 kids crying just on the way there. So we obtained the tangible. We got to the event. Merry Christmas. And you walk in and everyone's like, Merry Christmas. And all of your family are upset. Nobody likes each other. And we're hurting, right? Have you ever felt that happen in your life? The reality is, when it comes down to our traditions and our holiday events and activities, there are very tangible things we need to do. For example, back to that example I was talking about earlier with the guest on Becoming One of the things that she wanted to do with her family for the holiday to make it so fun and exciting was to decorate gingerbread houses, right? She went out, she bought all these really great kits, and she bought really awesome candy and had all of this stuff and created the perfect frosting for everybody to sit down and just laugh and giggle and enjoy building a gingerbread house. And again, very few people wanted to do it. And those that did were very interesting and nobody was talking. And she said it just was a big fat dud. And the reality of that was, what was unmet for her was the intangible of exciting, of fun, of love, of joy. That was all gone. And all she had spent her time focusing on in the preparation of that was the tangible stuff of the house, of getting the gingerbread made, of getting the frosting ready to decorate and making sure it's the right consistency and getting the right candy and having all of it and getting the paper towels and the cloth set up so everyone could do it. All of those are the very tangible things, but what most of us overlook are the intangibles. There's a perfect example of this that happened in our own family where we had gone away to another town, and we had this really awesome plan, my wife and I, of what we were going to do with our young little family for Thanksgiving. And we have a tradition of going on family walks. We took a really awesome walk, but our ultimate goal was to get to a restaurant, this one restaurant that all of our kids loved, and it was going to be so awesome because they were going to have the greatest Thanksgiving dinner. Anyway, we got there, and when we got there, it was closed. And so we're stuck. And at first, we're all like, what? What do we do now? So we started going to other restaurants, and they're all closed until we found the one shining light from heaven shining down on this one restaurant, a Denny's, and we pulled up with our family to Denny's. Now, some were a little perturbed because they were really excited about this other restaurant. But in the end, we sat at Denny's. By the way, there was 8 of us. I have 6 children and my wife and I, and we had a great meal. And it wasn't turkey, Some wanted chicken wings and some wanted spaghetti and some wanted something else. But what we ended up creating was an intangible, powerful, funny experience that we still all think about and share as one of the great Thanksgiving dinners. And it was one that went sideways because the tangibles weren't working, but the intangibles were all still there. Just know, when it comes right down to it, in all of our relationships, tangibles are one thing, and it's great, right? It's great to have a clean house. It's great to have, it's great to be married and have a tangible license. But in the end, what really matters in the relationship are the deeper things, the intangibles, the connection, the safety, the trust, the appreciation, the respect, the validation, the encouragement, the dedication. So a challenge for you is to make sure that your activities are actually focused on outcomes of love, togetherness, and joy, not just flawless execution and results, right? Make sure that we're actually intentionally focusing on having fun in the event, that we're intentionally focusing on communication and connection, not perfection, not even just the activity. Because eventually you might, for example, like we did during pandemic time, you might run into a moment where the tangibles can't happen, but the intangibles can. Go identify what the intangibles are that will make that tangible activity so much more valuable. So the third step to a happier holiday season is to reframe your stories. And what I mean by that is a lot of us, when we're growing up with our families, we don't necessarily have ideal situations, right? We don't have the perfect family setting. Maybe our parents divorced. Maybe there was abuse. Maybe there was, a lot of conflict and arguing going on, or maybe it just wasn't great memories. And so we bring these stories with us and we kind of hang on to those stories. And as we hang on to the story, we hang on to the pain. So if we're going to move on at this holiday time and actually create healthier present day realities, we've got to learn to reframe our stories as an empowered adult that you are now, not the disempowered child that you were. And why that's important is a lot of us, when we show up at our parents' homes, we show up still actually with the psyche of that little kid. We still look to mom to help us do everything. We still look to dad to know how to do whatever. But we're not walking in as the successful, adult that we are today. And we want to always make sure that you are the adult. Even if others still frame you and see you as the little baby of the family, you're not a little baby. You've got a job. You've got kids. You're moving on. You're healthy. A perfect example was one of our members of our Becoming One coaching program was on the call with me, and she was talking about how hard it is for her to accept positive feedback that she's a great, amazing, incredible woman. And the woman said, what do you do if every time you see something that is great, your mind tells you, yeah, that's not you, because you've never been good at this, and your mind makes up other stories. So we spent about 10 minutes on this Becoming One call talking about how she could reframe the story and how to reframe it no longer as a little red-headed girl, but as an adult woman that is powerful and strong and empowered to be that change. Some of the activities I had her do and had her take home for homework was I wanted her to go start to identify what are the stories that her mind is telling her about herself. How does her mind like to play her? And they're always negative. They're always things like, you're not good enough. Well, yeah, what about this example? That didn't work. What about this? It's all the whatabouts. It's dichotomizing. You're either good or you're bad. It's either black or white. And those are just little tricks that she noticed that her mind would play on her. And she came back and reported those tricks that her mind plays. The next question I asked is, why? How does it serve you? To have your mind do this to you, it must be serving some purpose for your mind. And she realized that it serves her because whenever she doesn't believe she's amazing and strong, she doesn't have to act. She can just quit doing and being the strong adult. So her mind is trying to keep her as the child. Now, why all of this matters is when we're reframing our stories, we all grew up with some frames that are really small that don't fit us, that we're not good at this. I learned when I was young, I'm not good at math. Townsends aren't math people. That's the frame I learned. And the reality is, I'm pretty good at math. With all of my degrees, I had to take statistics all the time and had to use statistics. And I'm good at it. But I have to remember it as the adult that I am. And I have to start noticing the little child that I am. And when I go to my child is when I go back and I just feel small and I feel like I'm not good enough. So we want to make sure we tell the whole story. And the whole story is the story that I had as a child, and then add the adult part of your life. So when I was young, I struggled. I think it was because my brain worked too fast, and I was really good with relationships and intangibles, but I wasn't as good with numbers. And so I started getting this thing in my head that I'm not good with numbers. And then it was validated by parents and other people. And I always struggled on tests because I had testing anxiety. That's part of the story. That's not the story. And I started to learn that I have other gifts that help me with math. I can think quickly on my feet, and my brain can multiply and add and divide quickly. And I'm a little slower and careful to actually just spit out the numbers. That becomes part of the healthier story. And now as an adult, I have a whole story. Healthy by definition means whole. And we want to make sure we're telling the whole story as we're trying to go into our holiday season. I'm not the little kid anymore that, got stuck on that ride and couldn't get off the ride. Even though that's the story you're going to tell, I am now whatever I am now. So we can always bring in this healthy other part. And I'm married, and I found an awesome wife, and we have an incredible family, and I can laugh about some of the things, and I'm not going to be held accountable or framed solely to that one thing I did a long, long, long time ago. I'm not just the kid that wet my bed when I was 8. I'm not that kid. Even if people bring up those stories, I don't have to frame my view of myself that way. I can see myself as resilient, as capable, as strong, as powerful. I can also view my challenges that I've gone through as temporary, that they were opportunities to learn. They were just part of my development. They're not permanent. They're not global to who I am. That little thing that happened back then is not who I am today. It was a stepping stone to me learning and growing. I can also go back and reframe my difficulties as invitations to show up as the adult. For example, all of my sisters have a lot of education. We and me too. We have a lot of school and degrees and certificates. We have a lot of education, and it's interesting because we grew up with parents that didn't, and grandparents that weren't educated in universities. And so I think that lack of education, I can reframe to why I love learning and growing and taking on these challenges. I am a different person because of the things I've gone through. So if you've hurt someone in the past, or if someone has hurt you, we can reflect on it, just like that woman, and see that I'm not that weak little thing, and I'm not going to allow myself to always be framed as weak, because I'm an adult, healthy, amazing person, and I can start as my adult noticing when my little insecure child shows up. So rather than going to your family events and getting caught in that insecurity and falling down and being that little tiny child that you were, that disempowered person, I want you to come in as the adult. I want you to keep front of mind that there's that tendency. And when you see it happen, I want you to adult back up and notice it. And I just want you to respond as the adult. Be the person that you needed somebody to be for you when you were a little child and no one was being that supportive, caring person for you. You go in and you be that for yourself, and you be that for others. And you don't have to be driven by all of the old historic whims that have held you down. Here's an activity for you. I want you to go sit down before going to these events, and I want you to reflect on a challenging holiday memory. or a challenging insecurity or a challenging anything that comes from your childhood that seems to rear its head during the holiday season. And I want you to rewrite the story as a grown-up, empowered, strong, successful person. Rewrite it, read it, talk about it, share it with your partner, and prepare yourself with some solutions for what you're going to do when that little disempowered child starts to appear. Bring your partner in, talk to them about it. Make it a part of your conversation that I need your help. And so if I go with the family and I start feeling small, I'm going to come find you and I'm going to tell you, hey, I think little Stacy's here. So can you love me and support me? And as a partner, we can pull each other out of these moments and we elevate the game together. That's really why we are together, right? So step number 4 to a happier holiday season is handling negativity with grace. There is a really high likelihood that there will be negativity from somebody somewhere during the holiday season. And it might be just the traditional people that you know are going to do it because they do it every year, or it might be one that sneaks up on you as a surprise. So what I want you to do is start to make a plan for how you are going to regulate and manage your reactions. How will you avoid reacting negatively? How will you make sure you're not being offended? What are you going to do to not complain, right? I want you to have your own plan. And one of my rules that's really, I think, important by Marcus Aurelius is that I don't need to let your nastiness make me complicit in the ugliness, which simply means I do not need to follow the lead of anybody that's nasty and negative. I am not going to turn over the reins to somebody else to make me gossip, to make me backbite. If you don't like the family that backbites, then don't backbite. That's the ultimate Gandhi quote, right? We must become the change we seek in the world. So how are you going to change the negativity from your frame of reference? How are you not going to take it negatively? How are you not going to express it negatively, but instead positively and calmly? One of the things that you can use to help you in any negative conversation is the minute somebody throws negativity at you, a really powerful response, it's a statement, but it sets a boundary, is, hey, Uncle Larry, that's not helpful. So if Uncle Larry calls somebody a name, or, well, yeah, but Stacy's just being so stupid. Hey, Uncle Larry, that's not helpful. We don't need to call people names. Now, that's scary, but it's actually weirdly just healthy. And if you're the strong one that's already been thinking about the negativity and you don't want to get caught up in the negativity, then you need to have some things that you can say or things that you can do, right? So just imagine you walk in to the Christmas dinner. You're walking in, you've got your big funny sweater on because everyone's wearing Christmas sweaters, and somebody says, whoa, somebody's put on some weight. And they just throw that right at you, right between your eyes. By the way, whether true or not, that was pretty negative, and we probably ought not say it. What do you say in that moment so it doesn't derail you for the entire time you're at this party? What do you do to not take it personally, right? How about an aunt that comes up or a grandma that comes up and says, oh, hey, honey, when are you going to give us some grandkids? And you've been trying for grandkids and they just didn't get it. Or if you're single, I bet if you just plucked your eyebrows and had a little makeover, you'd get more dates, honey. What you just say is you just tilt your head sideways. I always like to tilt my head sideways. And I look at him and I'd say, hey, Dad, that's not helpful. Hey, Mom, that's not helpful. That phrase, that's not helpful, stops harmful comments. And it encourages a more productive, supportive conversation. You don't need to start fighting them. You don't need to react with more emotion. You just say, that's not helpful. And what it allows everybody to do is to be corrected. Now, they may not respond in a helpful way, but you can just say, that's not helpful. And then you can walk away. And what do you do when you're away to not just sit there and be frustrated and upset the rest of the day? is you got to kind of get back into yourself and notice the little kid is back. And then go back to your skills earlier about reframing the story as a healthy adult. Right there, you starting to take on the situation and not just walk away, but first communicate. Dad, that's not helpful. You can even say, hey, that hurts. That's not helpful. And I'd prefer this. And you can tell them what you prefer. In the end, you have the right to not take offense. You have the right to look at them and realize they don't know how to relate to you. There's something that they just don't get about you. And you can actually reframe that. In fact, Marcus Aurelius had a quote that everyone needs to remember, that they have an option to not have an opinion, right? So that would be great if we could walk in and, hey, can I just remind everybody, before everybody offends everybody and everybody offends me, can we all just remember that we all have the right to not have opinions about everything, about everyone else? Just shut your cake holes, we could say to everybody, right? But because that won't be received very well, then you just work on you. You have the right to not have an opinion and be offended by what they say. Do not turn over your power to another person to offend you. You hold your ground. You know who you are. And if you need to, then that's not helpful, Dad. And then go talk to your partner and say, can you support me for a minute? I need an adult love right now. And then go exercise your gifts somewhere else during the Christmas season. And finally, step 5 to a happier holiday season is to take care of your basic needs. And when the holiday season gets crazy, a lot of times what ends up paying the price is your health, right? So there's 5 different areas I want you to make sure that you're taking care of your needs. I want you to make sure that you're in the right environment for calmness. For example, if you know you have a big party coming that you know will exhaust you, then go take some downtime before you go to the party to go back to nature and relax and calm yourself and just get rejuvenated and re-energized. You can also make sure that when you get to a party and it's not ideal and conducive, then you might want to get a better seat, find a calmer place, find a quieter place. But remember, the environment is something that you can, in some regards, control how you fit into the environment. A second need is physical needs to be met. You need your sleep. You need your exercise. You need hydration, right? You all have needs, and we all have these habits and regimens that we've been using for the entire year. And then we go away to stay with family and we get away from some of these habits that we have. If you're used to having protein in the morning, then make sure you plan for that protein physically. Make sure that you actually are getting your basic needs met. What if you live, I grew up and married into a smoothie family where every breakfast was kind of a smoothie. But I came from a family that was bacon and eggs and pancakes. And so when you transition from a bacon and eggs to a smoothie family, and you're not big into smoothies, you got to compensate a little bit. So you might take some snacks. You might take some granola bars. You might take more food if you're not thinking your physical needs will necessarily be met. We also have social needs. We also have friend needs, right? Some of us have a really high need to communicate. We're really extroverted. We love being with people. We love just having couple time or friend time and family time. And we can stay up all night and play games with everybody. And some of us don't have those social needs. We're a little bit more introverted. We'd rather have some alone time. Plus, we also have needs as socially as a couple. The time to actually talk to each other, the time to unwind together, the time to kind of go through the day and talk about what happened to you today, what happened to you. We need to make sure we're making time for these needs, and by taking breaks, by creating space to be alone or space to be together. We also might want to make sure we're taking care of some of the needs of our partner. If you know you have a really introverted partner, then maybe you don't need to put demands on them to come play every game that your extroverted family wants to play. What instead you could do is make an agreement or a deal ahead of time that, look, I'm good for about an hour of games. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down in the basement and watch some shows with some of the other kids or whatever. And let's agree to that up front so we're understanding each other's needs. And then it might be good that we actually, just as one introvert might come do the extroverted thing, it might be good for the extrovert to come down and sit with the introvert for a little bit and just calm and sit in their space a little bit, just so we're not having two completely different realities through this holiday season. Another type of need that you need to make sure you're watching out for are your mental health needs, right? If you're on any medication, make sure you're taking your medication. If you have certain ways to calm yourself by meditating, by going on your walks, by taking your naps, or by laughing a lot. I have a lot of clients and family that love watching really funny comedies. And they use the comedies, I think, to create some really healthy mental health for themselves. The last needs I'd have you watch out for are your spiritual needs. And that might be the need for meaning, the need for meditation, maybe the need for religion, and the need for having higher purpose. And so make sure those needs are being met during this time of season as well. Make sure you're having a chance to go serve and connect to a higher purpose and a higher power, especially if that's already a core part of what makes you healthy and whole, right? If we're going to be healthy and we're going to be whole, then we have to manage the environment that we're in. We have to manage our physical, our social, our mental, our spiritual needs. And as we do, we have a better chance of actually creating peace. And when we're more at peace, we're going to be less reactive to our partners. We're able to handle the disconnects with the people around us a little bit better. It's going to be a calmer experience for everybody. So one of the things I'd suggest that all of you do, and all of us, I know I'm going to be doing it as well, is I want you to create a checklist of the top 3 or 4 needs that you have in each of those areas. What are your most important physical needs? What are your most important environmental kind of needs for the situation that you're in? What are the social needs that you're going to have? The mental needs. Make a list of the top 3 or 4 things that are going to be in that area, and then have a plan to make sure you address them. And talk those plans out with your partner. If you know your partner's family is exhausting, and you know by day 4, if we do one more, whatever, I'm going to die. Talk it out ahead of time. How are you going to be able to manage and mitigate that? One of the ways I did it, I remember we went boating and had a houseboat. It was a great trip, a great vacation. It was so awesome. But I didn't want to go boating every day. And I was simultaneously feeling really stressed to write my PhD, my dissertation for my PhD. And while I was preparing to go, I knew that there was going to be moments that if I just stayed back on the houseboat while everyone else went boating, I knew that I could get some writing done, and I knew I would be alone. And that allowed me, by me planning ahead, I told everybody, hey, when I get there, guys, I'm going to have to do some writing. So I might not be going out on the boat all the time and stuff. And my wife kind of knew about it, and it worked incredibly well. And I would still go out like 3 times and stayed home 2 times. And in those 2 times, I created the space and the environment I needed to be able to manage all of my physical needs. So remember, we're going to set realistic expectations. We're going to focus on what matters most. We're going to reframe our stories. We're going to handle the negativity, and we're going to take care of our basic needs. And I'm not going to just do it for myself. I'm going to also be looking out for my partner. And we're going to be partnering through this holiday season together. And I promise when you do that, you're going to have a better holiday than you've ever had any time before. So that's all we have for you today. Have a happy holiday season. Make it a great one. And tune in next time for more ideas and tools to become one.